Ambidi bam, bambidi bam, ba baram bam 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 bam, ambidi bam, bambidi bam, bidi da 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 da. Shalom Aleichem to everybody and welcome, Baruch Hashem, Rabbi Tzvi Broker, Yoshua Gerzi, and we're very excited to share some upcoming news about our new season, Be'ezras Hashem, starting. And hopefully these few videos are going to be speaking about what we will be discussing. And what is that? Well, we call it work-life balance. We'll have another Be'ezras Hashem word as well to use. The Nakuda, though, is with what we want to speak about today. It really is a pain point and a sore point for many people. I think myself, Rav Tzvi, and I think so many people in a position of guiding or working with people come up to this challenge time and time again. And that is, how are we meant to balance out and balance up so many of our normative duties? When we're speaking about davening, when we're speaking about learning, and then there's a family, there's kids, and then there's work, and the list goes on. How do we work with it? What can we do about it? And the reason why this is, I would call a pain point, is because, as we said, I know for myself and Reb Tzvi, we're speaking to people about this time and time and time again. Mamash, almost every other conversation is about this work-life balance thing. So, Reb Tzvi.
Yeah, and I think that often it may not sound like that. You know, sometimes what you may be experiencing and people that come and speak with us are experiencing might look like a challenge in my limud Torah, may look like a challenge in my chinuch, may look like a challenge within my marriage. You know, but if you dig deep enough and through that conversation, you realize that really what's at the root of this challenge that a person's experiencing, that you might be experiencing right now, is this struggle that Rav Gerzi just spoke about, this struggle of how do I manage all of that? And, you know, if you're like me, you know, you hear these tzaddikim stories, the story is always about a couple hundred years ago when life was simple. Life was simple. I like to think, life was once simple. A person lived in a shtetl, a person lived in a village. He had his shul that he went to, small community, horse and wagon. Life was simple. What was there to really worry about? What was there to really do? But when we think about life in the fast lane in 2025, I know for myself, and I see, you see, we're thrown so many things, so many tasks that we need to take care of, and we're international, we're global. A person doesn't live just wherever they're living. People are feeling everything which is taking place, not just within his country, but within the Jewish world, within the world. And that could be very, very overwhelming.
The question is, can we do something about it?
Yeah, and it's interesting because I think that, as Torah Jews, we look to the Torah for guidance. The question is, do you, and this is the real question I want to ask you right now, do you think that the Torah has guidance for how to manage work-life balance in 2025? I know for myself, rolling through pages, and if you're someone who works on themselves, you learn the Musar Svar, you can see lots of things, but often we may feel like, well, does the Torah really understand what's taking place today? I think actually it could be quite dangerous, and I've struggled and suffered through this, is that when you see a Torah source out of context, I think that actually makes the problem even greater. Just imagine, you're learning a Mar Makom and you hear a shir from your Rebbe about the importance of limud Torah, Talmud Torah Keneged Kulam, and then it's like, okay, well, how do I apply that in my life, right? And then you hear an idea, about Shalom Bayis, and all the bracha comes from Shalom Bayis, because and you're in Avad and you hear about Shalom Bayis and everything's about Shalom Bayis, and it's like, okay, well then what just happened to my Torah? All right, and then if you're blessed to have children, and then you're hearing about the tzaddik, the gadol that used to spend 30 minutes each day discussing each one of his children, with his rebbitzin about where the children are, and you're like, oh, wow, that's really amazing. And it's like, okay, so no more chavrusas? What about my job? And it starts to become
this goes on.
Actually confusing. I think that Torah ideas out of context actually confusing, and sometimes is the reason why people are experiencing the stress, which really doesn't have to be.
And what happens when out of context learning takes place, and we are so wanting to have the Shalom Bayis, we end up hurting. It doesn't help us, it hurts. We end up feeling, so much, I think, guilt. Guilt is a strong word. People, I hear, feel guilty. There's a lot of shame.
I think doubt.
A lot of shame, doubt. Am I doing this right? So how many people I speak to, it seems to be I'm spending more time on my work, and then I'm not necessarily davening or learning well. I'm a lousy parent. I'm a lousy spouse. This is something very real.
If I spend the time with the wife and with the kids, then then what happens in my work?
And I need to work.
Learning? And if people I know this is a question I've asked myself, how am I doing? People how am I doing? How are you doing? How good do you feel about how well you're doing in your avodas Hashem? And I think a lot of people are walking around, they may on the outside smile, but in an honest moment feel like, really, how well am I doing? But maybe they're actually doing great, but they're just not feeling so great because they don't necessarily have clarity. So is this a new issue? Is this an issue of our generation, or has this been an old topic with the Jewish workers?
Well, Baruch Hashem, I think what we can suggest is an old issue. And Torah wisdom has a sophisticated approach. Torah wisdom has a sophisticated approach. We have in our sources this idea of Torah and Derech Eretz. Torah and Derech Eretz.
And it's not like a 21st century idea. We're talking about back to Mishnah times, right? Of this idea.
This was a balancing act that has been a communication point for centuries. I think probably it's more difficult today. The reason why it's more difficult today, just imagine living in the times of the Beis Hamikdash and your tefillah consisted of what? Of Shema and like Birchas Kohanim and Amida, not even the Amida of Birchas Hamazon.
There's a lot less responsibility.
We're quite weighted. And the learning was far less. There wasn't written down. And then over the years, more and more and more has creeped in. So even though it was a conversation point, and we have something called Derech Eretz and Torah and Derech Eretz, and Torah speaks to Ein Torah. If there's no Kemach, there's no Torah. If there's no Torah, there's no Kemach. Our sources are speaking to these tension points. But I would say today that maybe more than ever, the world of Torah and Derech Eretz and Torah is for sure an avodah that needs to be spoken to, because Tachlis is that we do have what to say. We really, really do have what to say. It's fascinating because when people read the self-help books and the books to do with personal growth and the world of work-life balance, we actually have a slightly different term. And I think in English it's a more accurate term. When we're speaking about work-life balance, there is this nakuda of, so to speak, balancing out. This is here, that's there, and everything, so to speak, it's not flatlining, but it's moving from one thing to another, and everything's in its right place.
Everything's in its right place at the same time.
Everything's
in moment, you have it all taken care of.
So in Yiddishkeit, it's not necessarily. First of all, it's fascinating when we say Torah with Derech Eretz. Is it Torah with Derech Eretz as Torah or Derech Eretz? Or is it Torah, that Torah is the source, and what we want to live with in regards to Derech Eretz is a Torah approach? Do you hear the diuk there? You've got Torah, which births what we call Derech Eretz. Derech Eretz exists, and it births something called Derech Eretz. And the conversation could be, is it Torah and Derech Eretz? So what we learn is that in regards to Yiddishkeit's approach, Judaism's approach, we actually have a slightly different term. It's work-life rhythm. We believe in Judaism in a rhythm, in a cadence, in an algorithm. There's ebbs and flows. And what we want is to understand everything emanates from Torah, and then we have something called Derech Eretz, the way the world works. And what we understand is there's a rutz of a shov, there's an ebb, there's a flow. And what we want is to, so to speak, dance. We want to dance life. What does dance life mean? As we'll go into, is that there's many different aspects of the day, and my wanting in the rhythm is to recognize where I am in this process, and dance with all of these elements and transition with all of these elements in a healthy way. Torah im derech eretz. Torah im derech eretz.
Wow. And I think it's a big mind shift. It's a big mind shift because sometimes we've heard, and it's a big buzzword, work-life balance, work-life balance, work-life balance. Ask yourself, or pull over your spouse or your friend or your chavrus and ask them, what does that actually mean? Like, I'm aiming for work-life balance. How's your work-life balance?
100% here, 100% there, 100% in, but it doesn't work like that.
When you ask yourself that question, ask yourself,
there's a rhythm.
What does that mean for you? And sometimes, it's like barking up the wrong tree. And Rav Gerzi shared is profound. In the world today, it's been discussed. There are critics of this concept, even outside of Torah, about work-life balance being something which is just not realistic. But this concept of rhythm, which is something we do find which is rooted in Torah, is something which is just so much more relevant for us. It doesn't mean that we're being irresponsible. It means is that we understand we have different roles, we have different responsibilities. We know what they are, but just as somebody who's managing different accounts, right, understands, okay, I have this account and that account, and now I need to move money into this account because that needs to finance this, and this account is running low, so I need to move money into that account. So if you can imagine, you have different accounts, right, these different areas of life, and we have to be present and we need to be real with what needs attention at any given moment, and then work with that rhythm. And then when we're able to work with that rhythm, it becomes something which we're actually able to focus on. It's actually something we can work with. And as Rav Gerzi said, I on one hand, we have to understand that yes, the Torah has wisdom, and we need to look at the Torah's wisdom because of the fact that if you just look at secular sources, and once again, secular sources have a lot of wisdom there. As we mentioned, they speak about the concept of work-life rhythm. But I know what Rav Gerzi, one of the things you've shared with me in the past is that often these approaches that are written by people that are not coming within the frum world and they can't understand this lifestyle that we live with, may say, okay, just follow this formula and it'll all be taken care of. You want to have good parenting, just do this. You want to be able to manage your finances, do this. If you want to have a good marriage, just do this. But what's the problem? Like, who are they writing to?
The problem at times is that you're dealing with, for example, an unmarried man in their 40s, and they are incredibly successful, and they don't have the responsibilities that a person who is Shomer Torah mitzvahs, a Jewish person on whatever level, has to hold, and it's not a fair comparison. And it hurts us because how many times do I speak to people and they really are trying their best to carry through this health in work-life balance, and they keep on feeling at the end of the day something's wrong with them because they're following this. But again, if you think about it, the simple, I have a friend of mine, he's a guru, and he gets up in the morning, the first thing he does, he gets up in the morning, his house is quiet, he gets up, he does yoga, and he does his meditation, and he hydrates, and he does journaling, and he goes for his run, and 5:30, 6, 7, 8, 9, comes home at 9, 10 o'clock after his run and his exercise, and then he stops at his desk and he starts to work, and then he has a few meetings, and that's his day in, day out. And in a conversation, he says, I never really thought about it. All the work that I'm doing is based around my dalad amais, my way of doing things. But I never stopped to ask you. You've got like your 6 children. They're all young. You get up in the morning.
I was like, I wish I could do that.
You get up in the morning to screaming and like, ah! And then it's getting everybody up to school, and then no, then you have to feed everyone sandwiches, clothing, okay, making sure they haven't worn the same clothes for the last 3 days, and making sure everyone's cared for. You've signed this, and this one's done their homework, and now these two are fighting. This one you have to make sure gets to the bus. So, but by the time we think we may have 30 seconds, then we're off to davening or off to work. We're on a train davening and traveling at the same time. like, he goes, oh, wow,
Okay,
how do you do it?
There you go, Chaver. You're not the only one. And I think it's just so important to have these conversations, and I'm so happy that we're having these conversations because they're conversations that need to be heard. And often, especially in our generation of everyone posting posting on their status the picture perfect and the picture perfect and the picture perfect. It's not the way that life really is. But what we have seen today, just to sum up, is that work-life conflict is real. Work-life conflict is real, and it's really the root of a lot of the frustration, a lot of the guilt, a lot of the sadness, a lot of the lack of satisfaction that people experience. It's real, it's prevalent. In fact, because of all of the different factors and roles and responsibilities that we play, perhaps it's something which is more prevalent, but it's not new. The Torah does speak about it. The Torah does give guidance about it. Secular sources gives a lot of wisdom, but we have to understand within context and often outside of context, like the beautiful story of Gerzi said of the books that you may have read. It's like, okay, that's very nice, but I invite you to my house, in the morning. I invite you, to live in a world where I just don't, have myself and a dog. I just don't have myself and just rely on technology to be able to make things easy. But the lives that a lot of you guys are living, to realize that we need the Torah's guidance, and the Torah's guidance is there. And the third point that we've spoken about is that the Torah understands, right, that this idea that many people have of a work-life balance, that everything is being taken care of at any given moment, everything is given all of its attention, is not necessarily something which is realistic or what our goal is, but rather what we're looking for is something which is described here as work-life rhythm, where we are responsible for all of our goals. We know what needs to be taken care of. We're on the ball. We're managing everything. However, we are attending to things within the present moment as they need to. Right? What requires to be able to do this is a set of principles, is a set of practices. Right? It's not just a concept, but to walk away from today is to understand and to appreciate that the Torah speaks about this. The Torah understands our generation, and with the right guidance and the right tools, we could really master our work-life rhythm.
Be'ezras Hashem, yishtah bracha, mazel, and hatzlacha, kol tov, kol yeshuas. Bam bidi da 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 da.